If you'll please stand for a moment of silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. If you wish to appear before the Planning Commission tonight, I'm going to ask that you fill out a notice of intent to speak at a public hearing. They're over on the table, and give it to the clerk, and we will get you on the agenda at the appropriate time. First item on business is the agenda. It's approval of the minutes for our meeting held on June 10th. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? And then is there a motion that we approve the minutes? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Jim made the motion.
Okay.
Terry, second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. The first item of business for a public hearing is a Land Development Code Amendment, small lot overlay. David.
Chairman and Planning Commission, good evening. I'm David Moon, Planning Manager with the Community Development Department. You each have received in your Planning Commission packet the revised small lot overlay zoning district language. There's some new language that I'll point out to you, and there are revisions that have been made based on the minutes of the Planning Commission workshop. First, additional language that I added, that's new language, is underscored. In paragraph 6 on page 3, under alleyways, I added all alleyways shall be placed within a separate tract owned by a homeowners association. That was to clarify the issue of the alley location so that a developer couldn't put the alley in an easement and then claim it as part of the lot area. The other additional language that was added appears on the top of page 5 related to vehicle parking. And that language states any portion of a vehicle parked within a driveway shall not extend into an area of an alley, street, sidewalk, or public right-of-way. Vehicles parked within a driveway located on a residential lot shall be oriented perpendicular to the street with the front or back of the vehicle facing a garage. The regulation shall also be incorporated into the Homeowners Association Code Covenant Restriction document. That's based on site visits that were made to various communities. Some planning commissioners identified concerns with cars parking across the driveway or angled in the driveway to fit in the driveway. So that language would clarify that issue and prevent it from, or help to prevent it from occurring. There are two areas based on the minutes of the Planning Commission workshop that staff requests clarification. The first is on page 4 relating to garage setbacks. Under paragraph 10, garage setbacks, under B2B, the rear setback for the overlay district for townhomes or garage was 22 feet. A comment had been brought to my attention that the 22 feet was only to apply to single-family homes and duplexes, but not to townhomes. And the townhomes would only be subject to the 10-foot minimum setback if accessed from an alley. So I'm asking for clarification from the Planning Commission on that issue.
The intent of that was to keep the driveways long enough for the largest vehicle that's being sold today, standard vehicle. And if it didn't fit, then the driveway's got to be 10 feet or less. So it absolutely would not fit, and then it would, the section you just added would apply about the vehicles parked in a driveway shall not extend in any area of an alley. I don't know that we made a distinction between townhomes and single-family lots. Do we need to? Is that, would it be a problem with townhomes?
For a single-family home and duplex, they do not have the 10-foot driveway option as there is with the townhomes. The rear entry garage, the setback is minimum 22 feet. For townhomes, there are two options for the rear entry garage. One is the garage is placed 10 or fewer feet from the rear property line. Then the garage setback is a minimum 5 feet to a maximum 10 feet.
Right.
If the garage is placed more than 10 feet from the property line, then it has to be set back a minimum of 22 feet, similar to a single-family home.
Right. I think that was the intent.
The second point that requires clarification is found on page 5 at the bottom under section 3.04.08, minimum residential livable area. The language now as written says that at least 75% of all dwelling units, regardless of residential type, shall have a minimum livable area of 1,700 square feet or greater. That applies to all types. It was brought to my attention that the intent was to only apply the 75% rule to single-family homes, and that townhomes are not included as part of that 75%.
What does the commission feel about that? Instead of applying to everything, it doesn't apply to townhomes, it just applies to single-family lots. The minimum living area of 1,700 square feet. I personally believe it applied to single-family homes. That was what we were intending, that we not have a lot of real small homes in there. Townhomes is a different product. Commission feel any differently, or is that okay? All right, so that 75% will apply to single-family lots.
As this is the final draft,
Right.
if there's any changes to the text, my recommendation is that you take a separate action
Okay.
on that change, and then if it's accepted, it's incorporated, and then you take a single motion on the entire document.
All right. So is there a motion that we change the language in section 3.04.08, number one, minimum residential livable area, to say no less than 75% of single-family homes shall have a minimum livable area of 1,700 square feet or greater? And, okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. So we're striking dwelling units regardless of residential type and substituting that for single-family homes.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Terry? All right.
At this point, that completes my presentation. Based on the Planning Commission's clarification on the points identified in the draft language, the staff recommends acceptance of the small lot overlay zoning district language.
All right. I just have it's really just a typographical, not typographical error, but in same page, item number 6 under design guidelines. Typically, when you refer to the post office and you're talking about a local office, you typically say the local postmaster. Instead of U.S. Postal Service office, it's local postmaster. So twice in that paragraph it says. So do we need a motion just to change that?
We'll interpret that as a Scrivener error
Okay.
and make the change.
All right. The last thing I think we need to talk a little bit about is section, on page 7, section 3.04.11, maintenance and community management. We were asking that the city have some authority in this document to enforce or force the homeowners association to comply with what's in their homeowners documents at the time they are incorporated. And did we have a chance to talk to the attorney? I know we're in the middle of swapping attorneys, so did we get an opinion, or we just let him look at this later and change
The
it?
new attorney, I believe just this week, signed a new contract, so I have not had an opportunity to bring this question to his attention.
Okay.
But based on the request of the Planning Commission, I'll do so and proceed with the ordinance unless you feel it's an issue that would require holding up the...
No, I think I'm going to suggest that the attorney look it over, this, especially this section, before it's presented to city council, to make sure he's comfortable with it, or he or she is comfortable with this before they present it to city council. I think this is kind of the intent that we were looking for, so I think that's written fairly well. So I think we can just move forward with it. Does the board have any more concerns or questions over this overlay district? All right. Is there anybody in the audience want to speak to that? Suzanne, do you have a question or comment or something? You come up and give your name and address, please.
I'm Suzanne Kidd, 1260 Lexington Parkway. I don't have a typed up copy of this. I tried to print it and my printer quit mid-cycle, so bear with me. I'm looking at item 3.04.07. It's under design guidelines. I think you were just referring to that section a minute ago. And I remembered when we had the discussion at the workshop about the mailboxes, so I wondered, it looked a little bit nebulous, I guess, in how it was worded, and I wondered if it would be a clearer statement to say, if the desire is that all of the mailboxes in front of individual houses look the same, I wondered if it would be clearer to say, shall be identical in style, color, and appearance, rather than, I think the word in the wording was maybe similar.
Uniform.
Uniform. And I wonder if it would be clearer to just say that the identical mailbox would be used for all single-family homes.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Does the commission have any thoughts about that? Uniform color and appearance, to me, is almost saying the same thing as identical. Is that, would you interpret that
My
way, David?
interpretation would be identical is probably stronger than uniform. Uniform might allow for some flexibility. This is my concern with requiring complete identical mailboxes. And many of you are probably familiar with this. Over time, a mailbox could be destroyed. A new kid driving a car could knock over a mailbox and damage it, but they can't find that mailbox on the market because it's no longer provided. So they can provide a similar mailbox, but not an identical mailbox.
Who, doesn't say in here who provides the mailboxes that are in front of single-family homes, right? I mean, we don't designate who has to provide those.
Typically, the developer is required to provide that at the time of the final development plan.
The first time.
They would present a detail, a diagram
Right.
of the mailbox as part of the application package.
Okay. I guess my question is, should we require that the homeowners association provide them after the fact, so we maintain that uniformity?
In that situation, the circumstance still arises that if a mailbox...
I understand, but they're going to
be
be more likely to want it to be uniform rather than just some off-the-wall thing that the homeowner goes out to Lowe's and buys or whatever. I mean, Rock Springs Ridge, I think the homeowners provide all of those, right?
The homeowners will have to provide the replacement, but the covenants require that they be the same, be uniform, be the same kind of mailbox that's there. And, I mean, we could say here that the HOA covenants must provide that. But even though the individual is responsible, at least in Rock Springs Ridge, for replacing the mailbox, they have to maintain the same kind of mailbox.
Well, then the uniform color and appearance will take care of that then. I think it's okay the way it is.
That allows for, if for some reason they're replacing the mailbox sometime in the future, as was said, and that identical mailbox is no longer
Right.
a viable option, you're going to replace it with one that is uniform or as similar as possible to what was existing.
Right,
Identical means you gotta do like with like.
right. I think we're good. All right, anybody else in the audience want to speak? If you come up and give us your name and address, please, sir.
Hello, Ed Hampton, Tallman Development Company, Maitland, Florida. I just wanted to bring up a point of clarification that I think was discussed last time or at the workshop session on 30406, page 3, under paragraph 3, housing types and mix. There is a reference there to the percentage of lots that must be 50 feet or larger. And I wanted to make sure that understood the intent is that it is 50% of the single family or duplex lots. At least half of them must be 50 feet or greater. As it is written right now, it could conceivably construed as applying to the townhouse lots as well. And that throws the overall mix of the town's small lots and small lots out of proportion. This is something I talked about with David Moon before, and I think we brought this up at the last work session. I just wanted to make sure that that was the fact. And if Mr. Moon's suggestion about this being final copy being all important, that the fix, the easy fix in paragraph 3 is to simply add the words on line 4 of paragraph 3, where it begins half of the lots, simply to say half of the single family / duplex lots, and that would clarify this.
Does that need to be clarified, David? I think that's the,
It's repetitive because at the beginning of the sentence it refers to single or duplex lots, but it doesn't change or hurt the sentence.
Okay.
So for
Let's,
clarification, if you want to add it, that's-
that was the intent, right?
That was the intent.
Okay, so let's just clarify it. Is there a motion that we add, as Mr. Hampton just suggested, 1/2 of single-family and/or duplex lots shall have a minimum width of... There's a motion. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience want to speak? All right, then we'll bring it back to the commission. Is there a motion that we recommend approval of the small lot overlay zoning district as a part of the City of Apopka's Land Development Code with the changes that we've made tonight in this document? Is there a motion to that effect?
I would make that motion.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. So, after 6 months of haggling with this. All right, next item is a comprehensive plan amendment, large-scale future land use.
case before you is a request to change the land use on approximately 74.76 acres from residential low density and agricultural to residential medium. This case is called a large-scale future land use amendment under Florida statutes. Large-scale land use amendments, after review by the Planning Commission and City Council, are transmitted to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity and other state departments for review. That process takes about 2 months for the state to review and assemble comments from the various state departments, and it's returned to the city for us to address any state concerns. And from that point, upon receipt of the state comments, the city has 180 days to have final hearings. The applicant is Apopka Clear Lake Investments, represented by Ken Stoltenberg. The location of the property is east of State Road 429, south of Peterson Road, and north of Lest Road. Present use of the land is vacant. The current zoning is planned unit development. The agricultural portion of the property at the south, which I'll show you shortly, is assigned a county zoning of A2 and has not been assigned a city zoning category. The proposed zoning is planned unit development following the R3 zoning category. In summary, the applicant has requested the medium density land use designation on 92 acres, but they also have obtained approval to include within the PUD property to the northwest corner, which was part of the original planned unit development. At the time the land use amendment comes back to the city after state review, a master site plan will accompany the future land use amendment, and they will proceed together for consideration. So at that time, the zoning amendment will include this property here. So it'll actually have much larger land area than is shown now. That property is assigned a low-density residential, and this application does not propose to change the land use designation. Medium-density residential allows for up to 10 units per acre. The current category assigned to the majority of the property as residential low allows up to 5 units per acre. After my presentation, during the public comment portion of the hearing, the applicant has requested to give a presentation about their proposed mixed-use project, which includes single-family homes, apartment buildings, and townhomes, as well as a small portion of the property that would be for a flexible use, either a boutique hotel, some type of a public or private school or a charter school, or a assisted living facility. As part of a mixed-use development, it will have its own internal park system and bike trail. However, what's key to this property to go from low density to medium density is transportation access. DRC, having reviewed this application and started the process of reviewing their proposed master site plan, has taken the position that an increase in density from 5 units to 10 units per acre for this property is only supported if there is a second road access to the north that will connect up to West Orange. Currently, the only access is from Lust Road, which connects up to Binion. Binion Road is windy, has curves, and lacks sidewalks on certain portions. So there may be safety issues along this portion of Binion. What the second access will accomplish is it will disperse the traffic to the north and to the south. So most of the traffic generated from the development of this property will avoid this section of Binion. And it will also improve response time for emergency access. The fire station is located on West Orange Ave, approximately where I'm pointing here. So instead of driving all the way down Binion in this fishhook fashion, the response time will be much shorter. So staff has supported the medium density future land use designation, subject to the developer constructing a roadway from the north end of the property up to West Orange Ave. Regarding the compatibility with adjacent land uses, to the southeast is a single-family residential subdivision. That's R1. That are 8,000 square foot lots. That subdivision is about to go under construction. The property to the northeast that will be part of this PUD development is low-density residential and has been planned for single-family residential, and the future plans are to keep it that way, single-family residential. To the north and to the northwest and to the west, the predominant land use is industrial. It is what we call an employment center. I'm going to pull up another map to show the zoning to the north. I might not be doing that, but I'll use this map. I did carry over to the email, might have been too large, but this map will suffice to illustrate my point. This is the city's future land use map. Right here is the subject property, now shown as low-density residential. This purple blob to the north is industrial land use. This orange property with a hash mark is mixed use. That can accommodate industrial or commercial land uses as well as residential. At this point here is the State Road 429 alignment. Peterson Road runs here, north of this property. It's substandard right-of-way and substandard pavement width, but there is a future connection to this area to the west. This is all industrial. Most of this land in here is owned by the St. John's Water Management as part of the Lake Apopka restoration area. To the south, along the south side of Lust Road and along Binion Road, it's zoned commercial. So there's commercial property almost immediately to the south of this property as well. So based on the proximity to this large employment area and possible future expansion of the airport and additional businesses that could follow the airport expansion, there is a need for housing diversity in this area of the city of Apopka. There have been housing studies that the applicant has prepared to demonstrate a need for apartments and townhomes in the Apopka area. I believe what they're presenting their presentation is that their apartment product is considered a luxury apartment, not a standard apartment. Also, in the economic development studies prepared by the Tri-City Partnerships consultant, Angela Economics, they identified Apopka lacks in its demographics young professionals. The type of housing diversity that would be proposed on the medium density residential land use designation and within the PUD would accommodate the needs for young professionals. Other information related to the medium density residential, it could accommodate on this property up to 948 units. That's based on 10 units per acre. As you'll see in the master site plan or discussion related to the master site plan, it's unlikely that this development will ever reach that density based on the open space needs that they will need to provide. Under the existing land use designation, low density residential, up to 454 residential units could be constructed on this property, and they have the right to do so. Based on DRC's review of the applicant's request for medium density residential, we find that the application is consistent with the character of the area, subject to the transportation issues being addressed as part of the master site plan and as part of a development agreement that establishes commitments to build that northern roadway. That opportunity will occur between the time that the comp plan amendment is transmitted to the state for their review and the final hearings on the comprehensive plan. Between the first hearing and the second hearing, the applicant proposes to move forward with their master site plan and PUD zoning, which DRC has already begun to review. And then the Planning Commission and City Council will have an opportunity to review that master site plan before the adoption of the future land use amendment. That concludes my presentation. Staff again finds the proposed medium density based on the transportation issues I've raised consistent with the comprehensive plan and finds it compatible with the character of the area, subject to the buffering and compliance with the requirements of the Land Development Code under the PUD zoning requirements. With that, I'll address any questions that the Planning Commission may have.
All right, does the Commission have any questions of David?
David, you mentioned Peterson Road was a substandard right-of-way.
Right-of-way width
Is
is
substandard.
60 feet. It's the pavement, and what's substandard is the corner. Right now, the road bends, but it appears that part of the pavement may actually be on private property. The piece that's in the corner, because the right-of-way is a square and the road is curved.
Okay, so there's issues with Peterson Road currently. Is there any plan, you mentioned it was going to be rectified or corrected?
At the present time, the city has no plans in its 5-year schedule of capital improvements
That's good enough, okay.
to construct Peterson or road from Peterson south to this property, or to improve the road from Peterson up to West Orange Ave.
Why would the city be responsible for that if this development is driving that? Why
The
would this
city
develop?
is not responsible for the construction of that roadway because it's not within our 5-year schedule capital 5-year capital improvement program. And that is the reason that staff has recommended that a development agreement between the city and the developer be established prior to the final hearing on the medium-density land use. That development agreement would obligate the developer to construct that roadway
Okay.
or reconstruct that roadway.
To the north,
To the north,
Orange Avenue.
Yes.
So it would not be a burden to the city.
without a burden to the city.
Okay.
They are obligated to pay transportation impact fees. Some or all of the road improvements may qualify for credits
Towards it.
towards the impact fees. The impact fees may or may not pay for all of the road improvement, but it would be the developer's responsibility to cover that difference.
Would the impact fees come to, would the impact fees come to the city or the county? Or both?
The city transportation impact fees.
All right, any other questions for David? All right, thank you. I understand the developer wants to make a presentation of the applicant, so we'll do that first.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Tom Sullivan with the Gray Robinson Law Firm on behalf of Apopka Clear Lake Investments. Appreciate the commission's time tonight. I was just going to...
Give us your address for the record.
Sure, I'm sorry.
please.
It's 301 East Pine Street, Orlando. I've got a couple folks here with me tonight. Ken Stoltenberg with Apopka Clear Lake is here, as well as our architect, Holly, who, in my opinion, deserves combat pay for being here with those crutches. We did first want to say that we appreciate David's presentation, which was very thorough, so I'll try not to be repetitive here with you all in going through what we wanted to share, but we do appreciate staff's recommendation for approval. And as David also said, this is really our first step in the process. We'll be back in front of you, hopefully, as we move forward to adopting the comp plan, coming back with the PUD. So this is really intended to just give you, as much detail as we can really share with you now at the land use change stage. And I know the commission is very familiar with that, but we did want to, and you'll see it here in a minute with some of the slides, just give you kind of a flavor for the quality and some elements of the plan that will come back with it. Aren't really necessarily in front of you with respect to the future land use change, but it's all kind of tied together and related in my opinion. So just wanted to give you a little bit of a feel for what we wanted to share with you. So if I could just go through this, I'll try to do it in the interest of time. I think the commission's already oriented to the area based on David's presentation. I did just want to echo what he said in terms of we understand the need to deal with access to the north. We're going to work on that developers agreement concept, and we've already had some dialogue there with respect to some of the other landowners as you move to the north there. So that's something that we're mindful of. So I did want to say that. I think, when you look at this particular slide, and I know everyone knows this already, but what really I think jumps out is the presence of State Road 429 here to the west. That's been, I think, a significant change to the area. Really, when you think about, and David touched on this too, but I think the original PUD or the current approval, I think it was called the Binion Estates PUD. At the time that was approved, that State Road 429 really wasn't there. There's been a lot of changes that have happened, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the other positive changes in the area in relation to economic development. But I did want to just point that out while we're all looking at this slide. This development plan slide really kind of shows you, just kind of picking up on what David was talking about. This just so that everyone's clear, the far eastern portion of this does include the single-family residential portion. That's really not in front of you tonight because we're not trying to change the land use designation on that portion, but just to show you how this all kind of relates together. So this is something that you'll really see more detail on when we come back through the PUD process. And that's the easternmost portion. Then and I'll point this out again, but we've taken and put a lot of thought and work with staff on the concept of transitioning this appropriately. So you have, and this may be a good time to point this out, on the far east side, as I said, you've got single-family residential that's really already approved. And as you move to the west, we've got a townhome piece. And then as you move farther west, we've got the apartments that we're proposing, the luxury apartments. Then as you move south, we have more townhomes. Then farther south, we have a really extensive recreational open space area, and then the far south portion of it is the flex space concept that David mentioned. So I just wanted to just show you that in the context of this slide. This is what I was alluding to before in terms of some of the, just to give you a little bit of a quality. Obviously, we're not proposing signage or landscaping here tonight, but just to give you a little bit of a feel for what the developer is envisioning for what that ultimately will look like. Really, on the public space features, and we have some other slides in here with respect to some of the amenities, but we've got bike trails throughout the property. We're focused on kind of connecting to the Lake Apopka loop. All those things are top of mind here, and that's kind of what some of these slides are intended to showcase. I kind of went over this, so I'll just do it quickly. This shows you a little bit more parcel by parcel, but I was saying before on single family to the east, moving west townhomes, moving west apartments, then moving, so what I'm going through it a little bit fast, but parcel A is the single family, parcel B1 is townhomes, B2 is luxury apartments. Going south, then B3 is townhomes, B4 is the rec open space, and 4 and 5 there in the south are the flex space for the, and we'll talk about the three concepts there in a second. But the next, so then what we have here in the slides that follow is, this is parcel A that you just saw with the single family that's really already been approved. The one thing I did want to point out here is that, as I said, even though this piece isn't really in front of you with respect to changing the land use, because it's going to remain single family, I do think that there was one feature that maybe is a little bit a sign of the market times, a little bit, in the sense that when the Binion Estates PUD was approved, it was approved with 5-foot side yard setbacks, which I think, I think that approval was a few years ago. So now that's been kind of borne out in the market to maybe be a little bit too much, or too much on top of itself. So what we would be proposing there is 7.5-foot side yard setback. So that's really the only difference between what's already approved there. So I thought I'd just point that out to you in passing. This is a little bit of a feel for, what some of the single-family residential product might look like. Just to touch on that, some of the community. I mentioned the kind of the walkability is a real highlight and kind of a strong characteristic of this whole community. And you can see, some of some of the elements there in terms of the sidewalk there on the bottom right. We've got, as I said before, bike trails throughout the project. Just like I said, trying to give you a little bit of a sense for what we envision here long term. And then, as I said, kind of moving west, that's the first townhome community. So that's really the first piece that we're asking for, the increase in density with respect to the land use change, because right now it's just low density residential. We're looking to get it with your support for medium density residential. And then you see some of the elements, give you a little bit of a sense for lot size. And you can kind of see here in terms of what the density would look like today. Prior to this request from single family, I think you get 58 units. We're asking for 114 with the increase in density to the medium density category. And then you see some of the things I've sort of just said to you that I won't read them all here in terms of the list of home features and amenities, but that's, again, just to give you a flavor for the quality more than anything of what we're talking about. Here's some kind of visuals on what the product, we think something close to what the product will look like. This next, again, kind of moving to the west, this is the multifamily apartments, which is kind of on the far west side of the project, kind of adjacent to the 429 frontage. And you can see some of the elements that we have in here. David mentioned this in passing, but I wanted to take a moment while we're talking about the apartments to kind of point this out. But these really are luxury apartments, and that's one of the things that we're really actually excited about with this project in terms of things that are happening here in Apopka. And we've got, as David said, there's economic development activity kind of to the north, and I think he referred to it as kind of an employment center. Well, of course, we also have, hopefully what's happening with Florida Hospital a couple miles away as well. And we think there's honestly quite a bit of synergy between this project and those projects, and providing, as the commission knows better than I do, really, all these uses kind of go hand in hand with having the right, the right demand out there for, and the right job creation. And so we really feel strongly that this is going to be targeted to young professionals. That's who we're trying to reach, especially with the apartments. that we're proposing, and they are luxury apartments. And when you look, there's kind of I won't read all of this, but there's kind of an industry standard definition out there for what a luxury apartment is in comparison with, say, a standard apartment, as David had kind of made that distinction. And there's a whole list of amenities, all of which we have here. So that's, I'll just read a couple of them just to make the point. 9-foot ceilings, bike trails, bike racks. The amenities are really strong in this project. I mean, we've got 4 different tennis courts. They just list them on here: basketball court, tennis court, racquetball court, on-site security, walk-in closets, walk-in showers, resort-style swimming pool. That's what we're talking about. So this really, I just want to be clear about that, because we do feel, as David pointed out as well, that there is a little bit of a, it's an underserved element of the city that I think is really needed, and that's why we've got a market study that bears it out, and we're excited about how this will fit into the demographics in the city and kind of catering to that young professional that wants to stay in the city and live in the city. So this is just a slide kind of, just a little bit timely with what I was saying in terms of some of the elements of what is a luxury apartment. You see the picture of the dog on there. There's actually two dog parks within the project. Just made me think of that. The South Mews, if you recall, when we were looking at the bigger map, this is the second kind of townhome portion of the project. So very similar, same elements of what the first neighborhood really was. So I won't be repetitive there. This is kind of moving south, if you recall the overall map of the project. This is the parcel B4 as labeled on our earlier map that shows the amenity package, which is, as I said, I mean, it's really top notch, really extensive with all the different offerings to kind of keep people on site and keep people, active and doing things that the folks we anticipate living here would be interested in doing. Then this is kind of an interesting one that I get personally excited about. This is the southern two parcels that we're calling kind of the flex zone, and David accurately mentioned it. We could see this as a boutique hotel, maybe some kind of a private charter school, perhaps assisted living facility, something along those lines. And we think that would fit tremendously well with the rest of the project. And part of the reason I said I was excited about it is the tie-in with the job creation, because any of those 3 uses will also create their own jobs within the area to kind of go along with the regional demand from the employment center, the hospital, those kind of things. So here's some other, again, slides highlighting some elements of the community, and that's it. So I went through that a little bit fast, but I think the commission's heard a lot of this before, especially in David's presentation was thorough. So we are available for any questions and happy to respond to them, and would certainly appreciate your recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions of the applicant? Any? All right, thank you very much. All right, we'll open it up for public hearing. I have one request from notice of intent to speak from Mr. Richard Withers. Is he here? If you'll give us your name and address, please, sir. Make your comments.
Certainly. My name is Richard Withers. I live at 2436 Wyndham Bay Place in Apopka, actually in the Clear Lake subdivision, which is just adjacent to the property that's part of this project, but really not yet.
It's part of the project, not part of today's discussion.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right. And I would say that generally speaking, the people in Clear Lakes are concerned, even to the point of being, like me, not in favor of any change in the zoning or land use that brings us higher density multifamily residency. All of us are permanent residents. We moved to Clear Lakes with the idea of remaining there for the rest of our lives, and I think most of our neighbors share that view. So anything that changes the character of the property and the surrounding neighborhood is something that concerns all of us. Certainly, putting 900 families, which you can do if you grant this zoning change, on that piece of property would be extremely upsetting to us, and it would certainly change our impressions, our understanding, and our belief about why we moved to Clear Lakes Estates. I hate to use a trite comment, but with the time we moved there, it was a quiet place in the country. You can't put 900 units on 90 acres and have that character stay. It's not going to be a quiet place in the country. It's going to be a quiet place in Kissimmee. We're not in favor of that. Now, I must say, these folks have a nice, impressive wish list, promise, idea of how this property can be developed, and you know, that part of it is encouraging. The idea of buffers is encouraging, although I must say that part of the property that's not part of what you're doing today, but it's going to be part of it someday, it seems a little dense. I mean, those homes appear to me to be packed in there a lot more tightly than they are either in Lake Heiniger Estates, which is just on the other side of us, or Clear Lakes Estates. I think our property is built to a lesser density. Certainly, our sidelines are a lot more than 7.5 feet. My particular residence would be right straight across Clear Lake from the edge of the development that comes down the little pointy end to the east.
Okay.
And I thought it was kind of bad when they built 429 where they did, because we hear it now. And it's gone from being a quiet place in the country to a not so quiet place in the country. I can't see how a large development over there, no matter how tastefully done, is going to result in less noise, less traffic, less exposure to other people. We're certainly going to be following this development, and the homeowners association will be a part of that. But we have concerns about density. We have concerns about buffer zones, setbacks, all the things you folks hear from concerned neighbors when any time a development comes in. Can I answer any questions for you?
Anybody have any questions? Are you representing the homeowners?
No, I'm here for
Okay.
just myself and
Okay.
my wife, but I can tell you that the homeowners association will be involved as this project goes along. It's
All right.
certainly a matter of discussion already.
All right, thank you, sir. Let me ask you a question. Can you bring those slides back up that had, I want to see parcel B2, I guess.
Sure.
All right.
I think that's the one you're,
Is that the apartment complex? Okay, so that's got, does that say 484?
yes, sir.
Okay, 484. So we've increased the density. We've increased the density from 454, what it could be today, to by 250 roughly, for that 95 acres essentially. I think you've got 114 on the
Right, yeah, we've
parcel
got-
one, B1, 484 on this one, and 104 on B3,
Correct,
so
correct.
it's increasing the density, not counting what you're going to do with the two
Right.
flex zones, by about 250 is all we're looking at, not the 500 and so, almost 500 that would be allowable total with the change.
That's correct, that's correct.
All right, thank you. All right, anybody else in the audience want to speak? Have any others? I've got a list of people that are interested in getting information from the state, so nobody wants to speak. Yes, sir. If you'll come up and give us your name and address, please. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is John Boudreau. I live in Clear Lake Estates. Neighbor of this gentleman that just spoke.
If you'll give us your address, please.
2529 Wyndham Bay Place.
Okay.
And I just have a question
Okay.
for clarification on the plot that they show a plat. there was a portion of ground that is now known as the Lust Grant.
Right.
Okay. Is that included in this zoning change? And if so, can we get a description of what's going in there?
No, no, it's not in part of the discussion tonight. It was in his presentation because it's that upper right-hand section that's already been approved. They're not asking for any change on that, but they are increasing the side yard setbacks from 5 feet to 7.5 feet, he said, from what's already been approved in the city. So that's already done. That's not part of the discussion, but it will become part of the total development.
Okay, once again, just for clarification.
Yes.
That is going to be developed?
It will be developed as part of this development.
Right.
But that section's already been approved by
Okay.
the city.
Okay.
They could do that tonight.
Right. And the use that it's been approved for already is single-family dwelling?
It's low density, 0 to 5 dwelling units per acre is the land use, and the zoning is what, David? Is it R1?
Right now, the zoning on the property is PUD.
PUD? Okay.
PUD
For
means?
Plan-
that, the northwest section, the property owned by Lust Grant
Yes.
is R1. No, I'm corrected. It's PUD because it's part of the original PUD for the site. That, the Lust property and this property were part of a PUD that was previously approved by the city several years ago.
Right.
It was a single-family development with access only down to Lust Road.
And it will remain a single-family development, that section.
Okay, and the other question is PUD, I'm not familiar with.
Planned
this.
unit development,
Planned use development?
unit development.
Unit development. Okay, I think that's all I have. Thank you
All
all
right,
very
thank
much.
you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Come up and give your name and address.
My name is Richard Simon. I live at 62 Sedona Cove Drive in Clear Lakes. Just want to make sure that you're aware that the first gentleman that spoke about his concerns and worries is not alone. If I was going to say anything to you, it would be every word that he said.
Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming that everybody else here from that subdivision is echoing those same sentiments. All right, thank you. I would like to point out to all of y'all that if you haven't, there's a sheet over there on the table. Several of you've already filled it out, but it's a sheet that will go with this transmittal if it's recommended by City Council to the state, and they will keep you informed of any activity that occurs with that that request. So if you're interested in that and haven't signed this sheet, there's blank sheets over at the table. Please fill those out, and those will become part of the record and the document that's forwarded to the state. All right, anybody else? All right, then we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for their action. And David, I would like, if you would please, sir, to come up and give us the time frame again on what is going to occur if this recommended goes to the council and they approve it, what the time frame is for the state and all that stuff.
City Council will have a hearing at its August the 6th regular City Council meeting. If they approve transmittal, approximately 10 days after their hearing, the application will be transmitted to state agencies and Orange County government. The state then has no more than 60 days to provide a response. When the response returns to the city, we have 180 days to proceed towards an adoption hearing. If transmitted between the transmittal date, when the package is sent up to the state, and when the hearings are held before Planning Commission for the zoning, staff will be working with the applicant on their master site plan. So, if transmitted in approximately 2.5 to 4 months, the zoning would appear before the Planning Commission with the master site plan. Typically, the land use, if it's accepted by or recommended by the Planning Commission, does not return. But the Planning Commission could request that it return as part of the PUD master plan zoning. That way you can reconsider the intensity of the property related to the proposed medium density. Make your final recommendation, and then it proceeds to the final hearings with City Council. So in summary, after City Council takes action, if it takes action to transmit on the 6th, 10 days afterwards, the information is sent up to the state agencies for their review. Approximately 60 days after that, we'll receive their comments and then proceed to hearings on the zoning and the final adoption of the future land use with Planning Commission, City Council. Unless requested by Planning Commission, if you take action to recommend transmittal and adoption of the medium density land use for the 92 acres, it will not, the land use will not return to the Planning Commission.
All right, so when it comes back from the state, the city has 180 days to act on it.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So we're talking about from today's date, 9 months before it's finalized with the 10 days, 60 days, 180 days.
Could be finalized earlier.
It could
But
be.
by state law, the land use amendment has to be addressed by the city within 180 days after the state makes comment on the application.
All right, when the state makes comments, the city has still at that point does not have to approve it. They can still say, no, we don't want to make this change, even
Correct.
though we've submitted it to the state.
Yes.
Correct, okay, thank you. All right. For a couple of reasons, I'm talking to the commission, for a couple of reasons, I'd like to see it come back to us after it goes to the state and we get the comments back. Normally, we would not see that, as David said. One is to make sure we've addressed the or got the development agreement to take care of Peterson Road, as you brought up, Ben. And also to make sure that this is the development that's intended for that site and not something else that gets changed down the road. So I would like to see all of this come back with the zoning, the final recommendation to the city council for this land use change and the development plan, master development plan, before the city council sees it after the 60-day comment period. So that would be my recommendation, that we recommend approval for the submission to the state of this land use change with those caveats, that it come back to us for those reasons, and that we can see the zoning request and the development plan all at once before we recommend to the city council what to do. Any discussion, comment?
Mr. Chairman?
I'll take a motion if you
Was
have
that a
it.
motion?
No.
Is that a motion, Mike?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, there is a motion. Did you get that, Gene?
Yes.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
So if I understand the process correctly, what's going to happen now is that your action tonight is going to go to the city.
What
The
we-
city is going to then approve transmittal to the state.
Not necessarily.
No.
What happened just now is we recommend to the city council that they are allowed to send it, they should send it up for approval. They don't have to do what we recommend. That will occur at their regular scheduled meeting on August the 6th, and that's Jay, is that a 1:30 meeting? The first meeting of the month, 1:30 meeting, August 6th in here, and you'll have your opportunity to come and have the same discussion with them. Unfortunately, get to do it twice, so you won't put that on your calendar. If they approve it, then it goes to the state. State has 60 days. And what we just asked for in our motion, our recommendation to the city council is that it come back to us with the zoning, with the future land use change, and the final or at least a preliminary development plan of this development, so it doesn't change somewhere along the way. And we approve what we saw here tonight and not something else, as you alluded to in your comments.
Is the city obliged to return it to you in that case?
Yes.
Okay,
They
good.
would be.
Well, I would assume that we'd be back in front of you all to discuss the concerns that I laid out to you, buffers, setbacks,
Yes,
things like that.
absolutely.
Okay, well, that's encouraging. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions about this? You need, ma'am, you have to come up and give your name and address for the record, sorry. Just give us your name and address and then make your comments.
My name is Pam Toller, and I live at 2084 Tournament Drive. And just a question and clarification is, has an environmental study, impact study, been conducted, or is one intended to be conducted?
I'm going to let David or Jay answer. That will occur later on in the process, I believe. Okay.
There will be.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, thank you. Let's move on to the next item on our agenda is item number 3, change of zoning, master site plan, preliminary development plan for rain or shine recycling. Thank you, sir. Take your time.
Planning Commission and Chair, I'm David Moon, Plan Manager with the Community Development Department. The case before you is a request to rezone approximately 19.4 acres on Hermit Smith Road. Let me switch sheets because I will repeat the presentation I just gave. The case is the Rain or Shine Recycling Solutions property. The applicant is Rainer Apopka Land Management LLC. The applicant engineer is American Civil Engineering. Location is 100 and 126 Hermit Smith Road. The property is currently vacant, and a portion of it has a warehouse and an office on the property. The portion of the property that is vacant has been used for the outdoor storage of raw materials in the past, so it's not virgin vacant land. It has been impacted in the past. The current zoning of the property is County I-4, and the city zoning is ZIP. Now, this is the boundaries of the property, and the current warehouse is on the portion that is zoned I-4 ZIP. The city zoning has not been assigned. The I-4 county zoning category is one of its more intensive industrial categories. It would be similar to the city's I-2 zoning category. The 15 acres on the west side of the subject site is zoned I-1 industrial, and the future land use for all of the property is industrial. So the intent for the use of this property is industrial. Based on the current zoning assigned to the property, up to 507,000 square feet of industrial buildings could be constructed on the property, and that would not change whether the zoning were I-1 or I-2. The requested zoning is to planned unit development with the intent of the development standards to fall under the I-2 category. The proposed use is a mulch manufacturing business. As a planned unit development, the applicant is required to prepare a master site plan that must be consistent with the requirements of the Land Development Code. The applicant has prepared a master site plan, and it is in your packet for your review. The operation of the company, which the applicant is here and likely will explain, is that down trees and limbs are hauled to the site in large trucks. There is outdoor equipment then that converts the trees into landscaping mulch. The raw materials are stored in large piles. Once they're turned into chip and color added to the chips, they're stored in the piles for the final product. Regarding the character of the area, it's predominantly industrial. The only access to the site is from Hermit Smith Road, which runs north to 441 Orange Blossom Trail. The other access is at north of Hermit Smith Road. Before 441 is General Electric Boulevard, which runs to the east under State Road 429 and connects up to West Orange and another portion of 441. Now, my map should have transferred over, and the Rain or Shine site is located here. This is Hermit Smith Road, running north to 441. What's important, and is shown on this map, is that the public right-of-way portion of Hermit Smith Road stops right here at the corner of the proposed PUD zoning subject site. The property immediate to the north has a land use and zoning designation for residential development. However, Rain or Shine has purchased that property and has control and ownership of it. The public right-of-way stops here at the northwest corner. There's a parcel here that's not under their ownership. And then from the public right-of-way south to the southern end of their property is a 40-foot wide easement that's within the property owned by the Bowen brothers. That is a semi-truck repair and shipping business. Based on their use, it actually meets the intent of the city's I-2 zoning, although it also has the county I-4 zoning and has not received a city zoning on that property.
What's that distance? You got it labeled on the site plan. I think I put on the site plan as a private drive 40-foot easement. North of there is right of way. What is the difference between a right of way and a
Public right-of-way is owned and managed by the local government, in this case, the city of Apopka. A private easement, a private road is owned by the property owners that benefit from the easement, and then the easement is granted to others to travel upon it or for other specific purposes. The city
what specific purpose?
besides travel, it could be used for the right to have water and sewer lines travel through it, which in the city's case, we do have easement rights for water and sewer line that run through a portion of that adjacent property.
Okay.
Before you get off of that topic there, it's not shown on yours, I think it's hidden by your I-4 zip label there, but on ours, there's a cutout piece of property there that says it's owned by Custom Foliage Services,
This piece
that
of-
corner right there.
Yes,
So how does Rain or Shine have access to Hermit Smith?
they don't have access on their property to the public right-of-way portion.
Right,
They have provided easement documents that show that they have rights to use a 40-foot easement
okay,
within the Bowen
All right.
brothers' property. And their attorney prepared a document and submitted it to DRC for its review to demonstrate that they had rights to use that easement.
okay.
And this wasn't an easy project to review because of the access issues, and I've been working with this applicant for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And I've also had discussions with the Bowen Brothers representative on that site and over this project. Staff's intention was initially to have a public right-of-way from the north end of the property down to the south end. And as you'll see in the master site plan for the PUD zoning, this applicant has committed to deed or to dedicate to the city a 10-foot right-of-way easement along the eastern boundary of their property. If the city notifies them that it intends to convert that 40-foot easement into a public right-of-way, we then can, the city engineer can contact them and request that they deed to the city, to dedicate to the city that 10-foot
Okay.
strip of property to create a 50-foot public right-of-way.
All right.
But in the interim, lacking the dedication to a public right-of-way, what is that? What is that easement? Who does that easement inure to? Whose benefit?
The easement, from our interpretation, from the material that they provide to us, addresses rights for the Rain or Shine property owner to travel upon that easement.
Only Rain or Shine.
Others could, but they haven't those property owners haven't demonstrated to us that they have the right to use that easement. So in the event property to the south were to develop and were to cross, and we knew they would cross that easement, we would ask, staff would ask them to demonstrate that they have the right to cross that easement. The intent of this map is to show that the area to the north is primarily industrial, I-1. There is residential land, but in my professional opinion, with all the industrial that occurs on Hogs Head Boulevard, either the nursery foliage industry that is there, or that already occurring there under industrial zoning, and with the industrial zoning and uses that surround this property, the character of this area is industrial. This area shows the northern areas and up to 441, showing that the Herman Smith Strip and General Electric roads. Again, Herman Smith public roadway stops here, corner where it says I-4 zip. But up to the north, you'll see all the area south of the railroad track, for the most part, is zoned for industrial, or it's an ag use. This is unincorporated area, that's C3 commercial, which is wholesale. There is some R3 in here, but that, in my opinion, is likely to change to commercial or to I3 or industrial in the future as the character of this area changes to industrial. Also, not shown on this map, is to the northwest is the airport. If the airport does expand, based on its likely location, this area here will fall within the flight paths going in or out of the airport. So that also makes it unattractive for future residential development. Part of your package, you'll see the master site plan. Generally, to review the property, this is the current easement of Hermit Smith, would be an extension of Hermit Smith Road. Again, the easement would basically make this a private street for these property owners. There are 3 driveway access points that are proposed. One to the future phase. This project is being proposed to phase, so what you see highlighted in gray is to the north here is a future phase. This is the existing phase, existing building, metal building that's present on the site. However, because of its proximity, it was difficult to design some of the operational property so that they could eliminate that driveway cut. But as a condition on the plan, at the time here, this condition states that they will, gate number 3, they will eliminate at that time that building is destroyed or relocated. They own that property to the north along the Hermit Smith public right-of-way that they may expand onto in the future. So if they were to expand, likely they have the opportunity to relocate this building to that site. When they do, they would be requested to eliminate that driveway and to have only 2 access points onto Hermit Smith. Now the city realizes, well, this area isn't very aesthetic at this time. If you ever drive down the south end of Hermit Smith Road, it looks like a industrial area with that trucking business there, and also with the horticultural greenhouses that are out in that area. But that's not always going to be the case. As new development occurs and complies with the code, the area will start to incorporate some of the landscaping aesthetics that are required. And that's the case. Working with this applicant, and they've been very cooperative with DRC comments. They were even amenable to creating this as a public road with curbs. But through communications with this property owner, the Bowen brothers, they wanted that easement to remain private. So staff believes that
Say that one more time.
My communications with the Bowen brothers is that they did not object to this project so long as that roadway,
Remain private.
which rain or shine is required to pave and reconstruct, as long as that roadway remains an easement and functions as a private roadway. The Bowen brothers, their operation is called Bonus Transportation, they have concerns with security. Because they've been isolated in that area, they've had issues with break-ins and thefts. So if it remains, that section of the road at this time remains private, they have more control over who drives upon their property, because 40 feet of the easement now exists on their property. As the area grows and there's more people out in that area, then that'll help provide better security for their operation, for their business. Okay. As part of their site plan, these circles you see on the plan are where the outdoor mulching equipment will process the materials, and the piles occur here. And the applicant explained this a little bit better. There are locations where the raw materials are stored when they're trucked in. The trucks enter from the southern entrance, and they're large trucks, they're semi-size or dump truck size vehicles through the southern operation. The land level code for industrial development requires a 25-foot landscape buffer with a brick wall across the front. The applicant, even though there's no one out there at this point, has agreed to accommodate that buffer and has a 25-foot landscape buffer at this location. The code does ask for a brick wall, but their concern is for security reasons. The brick wall would prevent the police from observing into the interior of the site. So they've asked for a security fence along the property, basically a chain link fence. And that's not uncommon for industrial areas. When Coca-Cola had a major redevelopment plan for their property, the city did not require Coca-Cola to put a brick wall along West Orange Ave. It has a chain link fence with barbed wire at the top for security purposes, so the police can see in the property and so that they can see who's outside their property as well. This application is for PUD zoning, so as part of a PUD zoning, an applicant basically can establish their own land development code. So they've asked for these waivers, but if they're incorporated as a PUD, they basically become part of the zoning. So they really aren't a variance or a waiver. They become part of the code, but we identify them as such for this purposes, so you know where they're deviating from our existing codes. So that's the first deviation is along Hermit Smith easement. They've met the landscape width, the buffer width, but they've asked for the not to install the brick wall. Other areas of the property to the south, adjacent to the property south, they have a 20-foot buffer with a chain link fence. To the north, they provide a 30-foot buffer. Shows up. Here's a 30-foot buffer. On this side, it's zoned R1 AA, which is a minimum of 12,500 square foot lot, but they own it. And their intent at this time is in the future not to develop residential, but likely to apply for an industrial or warehousing use.
Why is one at 20 and one's at 30?
Based on the site plan and adjacent property, most of the property to the south is controlled by the Water Management District. It gets into the Lake Apopka restoration area.
Oh, it's zone 1A or 1AA or something.
I'll go back to the zoning map. Okay.
R1AA.
This property here is all controlled by the Water Management District. This is private property to the south. It's a triangular in shape. It has several zoning categories assigned to it. It's R1 AA, mixed DC, and ag. Now,
What's mixed DC?
mixed DC is a zoning category that allows for industrial, commercial, or residential.
So it could be R1 AA almost 90% of it.
It,
I mean,
It could be.
You could use that residential, that density residential.
yes. My opinion, though, that based on the current access to Herman Smith Road, most home buyers, after they went through a heavy industrial area, and knowing that Herman Smith,
That's not their access, David.
excuse me?
You just said that wasn't their access.
Well, if it were,
But why would you say if it were, when their access is, I'm assuming Peterson Road now?
Peterson Road doesn't go through. It's substandard.
Well, then what's their access to the property? It's private access, so it's, do they not have access?
Right now, they're likely using the easement to the north. They,
Illegally.
I don't know. As I said, if development occurred on this property, we'd ask for them to demonstrate that they had legal right to cross this. They have accessed this before because the property received approval from the city to recontour the site, basically remove fill from the site, which was hauled off of this existing portions of Peterson Road right-of-way over to
Use 429. I'm just curious what their access is. If it's Peterson Road, if it's not Herman Smith, it has to be Peterson Road.
Peterson isn't paved and it has substandard, some portions of Peterson Road are...
But their legal access is not Herman Smith.
I don't have an answer to that. As I said, if this property, if a development application were submitted, we'd ask them to demonstrate that they have legal access to Herman Smith easement. That's under control of the Bowen brothers at this time.
That hadn't been discussed with them. It hadn't been discussed with the Bowen brothers.
In terms of other property owners accessing it, I didn't get to the
There's only one
specifics
more.
of it, but I do know that the Bowen brothers are concerned about who crosses it, because they own the property on which that easement occurs.
My biggest problem, you're asking us to create variances based on who knows what access, who knows what developments, who knows what, and you say they're gonna go with the zoning. I mean, we're kind of agreeing to those things here, and I really don't have a problem on what happens along Herman Smith, but I think you ought to consider the south side of that property to be a little bit of an unknown, not just say it's all St. John's, when only it's less than 25% of it's St. John's. Somebody else's property.
Is that piece of property that,
You got radial stackers there with assumed large piles, and you're asking for a variance against something that's residential flooding it? I guess that's my question.
is that not the borrow pit?
That is correct.
It's
That property
recontoured,
to the south.
he called it
It's
recontoured.
recontoured. It doesn't really constitute a borrow pit because they skim off the surface
So will it,
so that
It's
the
not
land
a
that
lake.
remains is still developable.
but in the comments on the sheet, it says not likely to be developed because it was a borrow pit. Is that not true?
On which, on the plan or in the staff report?
In the variance.
In your, yeah.
That's their comment. That's not staff's position. That hasn't been demonstrated. That comment probably should be removed from their plans.
It's not in the plans, it's in the staff report.
It says in item 3, additionally, the applicant is requesting a waiver to allow a 20-foot buffer along the southern property line because the adjacent property is a borrow pit that is not conducive to residential use. Staff does not object to any of the above waiver requests, so
Yeah,
Is that not-
back to the zoning map.
is that not true?
My opinion is that that area is industrial. There's an airport that likely is going to be expanded. And so that's right underneath the flight path. It's unattractive for residential development.
Who owns it? Are they here? They are here.
They are
All
here.
right. We'll find out.
Okay. Back to the zoning map. That's the northern property. Let me flip the map for the south side. Okay, this is mixed EC. This portion is residential. This portion of that property all under ownership is ag. I believe this portion, I believe it has a conservation use or designation on it. The property is already zoned I-1, so whether this is residential or not, it still has the right to develop as industrial.
Because it abuts industrial.
It already abuts this property, it already has I-1. What the applicant is requesting is I-2 zoning through a PUD, but in the document as the zoning conditions, okay, it says that the only I-2 use that's allowed is the outdoor equipment for the manufacturing and production of mulch and for the outdoor storage of raw materials. This property, if I can go back to the air photo, okay. This is the property to the north of the R1A zoning. It's already zoned I-4 in the county zoning, which is what is that.
I think you're going down a road, I have no issues with what's going on with the property. I think that's a great location for radial stacking, outside equipment, mulch production, whatever you want to do there. It's right in a trucking corridor, there's a lot of trucking activity in there. My question is, what do we do, why are we asking for a variance from a neighbor that could go industrial, but he's actually zoned residential? I mean, my only concern here is what variances you're asking us to approve that are going with the zoning.
The buffer with that would be required is 30 feet. To accommodate their plan, they asked for a 10-foot variance, but in residential zoning, although they have the right to develop as residential, they also have the right to develop industrial or commercial on this property. And based on the access issues to this site, as well as the industrial character of this property, I feel the site's unattractive for residential development in the future.
I don't disagree, David, but there's certain, I guess the issue is, you got a quagmire here, you have no idea what that property's gonna be. It could be anything from industrial to residential. Access, you want right, you stated that you want the city to have right of way down to that property. I assume for hopefully a connection with Peterson Road at some point. Why couldn't we make it all happen like one time, rather than piecemeal it and giving variances and...
Because the Bowen brothers aren't part of this application.
I understand that, but why couldn't it go on the property that we're talking about?
Why?
I mean, you're gonna give up 10 feet, why not give up 50 feet? If that's what the city's looking for,
They have an existing building.
we can give them a variance from the offset from the existing building.
Well, I would let the applicant explain their situation with providing all 50 feet of that right-of-way on their property and the impact it would have on their existing building.
Okay.
The request for I-2 zoning, the DRC felt that some of the uses or activities allowed on I-2 may be intensive, too intensive for this area, not knowing what that proposed use might be. So under the PUD conditions, staff has recommended, and the applicant has agreed, that the use of the subject property will be limited to the manufacturing and production of mulch with outdoor storage of raw materials and with outdoor manufacturing operations. All outdoor storage and outdoor manufacturing operations shall be located within a screened area not visible from adjacent properties or streets. Outdoor mulch manufacturing, outdoor storage of raw materials are the only I-2 uses that are allowed. The other use of the property that are allowed are I-1 or C3 permitted uses, those currently allowed on the property based on its zoning. C2, C1, CN, or professional office institutional uses are not allowed. The reason for that, based on the character of the area being industrial, those zoning categories would allow for a daycare. Daycare likely wouldn't be an appropriate use, or bringing public into that area that could be where they're subject to the truck traffic may not be appropriate either. So while those zoning uses are allowed under I-1 and I-2, based on the character area, it was recommended that the applicant would not be allowed those activities. Any use of the property other than the permitted uses described above shall require an amendment to the PUD through the zoning process. Other zoning conditions include overnight parking of trucks or other large vehicles shall occur only within the boundaries of the master site plan and within areas so designated on said plan. No overnight parking of trucks will be allowed within the office parking lots. No parking of any vehicles will occur within any roadway easement running within the subject property or abutting the eastern property line. That means that although this is a private easement, private roadway, they wouldn't be allowed to park trucks within it. All motion equipment shall only be placed in the areas denoted in the master site plan. No parking of any vehicle or truck or storage, outdoor storage shall occur within any landscape buffer area appearing on the master site plan. Then other development conditions are provided under the proposed PUD ordinance. I won't go those in details, but it controls the development and type of construction that can occur on the property. So those conditions would be incorporated in ordinance that are assigned to the property. Thus, anyone who purchased the property would be subject to those same zoning and development standards. Regarding the issues with the buffer, that's there's a recommendation by staff to support those waivers, considering that it was an industrial use. If Planning Commission feels otherwise and feels that it should provide a 30-foot buffer in brick wall adjacent to the R1 AA zoning, then that's your choice. But it's currently undeveloped. Borrow pits are, or the removal of the fill is already an activity that has dropped the elevation of that property. So whatever homes are constructed in that area are going to be below, they're going to be several feet already or more below the elevation of this industrial site. It drops off fairly steeply. So in terms of a buffer, there's already somewhat of a visual bearing, because the noise and activity are going to be occurring at a higher level than what the residential development currently occurs since the fill was removed. In terms of industrial use, I can say that a real estate broker has called me. There is a company from Canada that was looking at that site, that using that portion zoned R1AA for a cement slab
David, we'll find out in a minute. The owner's here. We're going to ask him what his,
Okay.
and what his intentions are with that property. So we'll know here in just a minute.
Mhm.
All right? So we have two motions before us for this piece of property. One is to change the zoning, and one is to approve the master site plan, PUD.
Yes. The
Okay.
BRC finds that their application is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the PUD land development code, subject to the zoning conditions within the PUD
Right.
zoning report.
Okay. All right, does the commission have any other questions of David? All right, does the applicant want to give a presentation, or are you back here? Okay. You don't have to if you don't want to. Okay, I appreciate that, because I'm getting hungry. Give us your name and address, please, sir.
Yes, sir. John Herbert, American Civil Engineering Company.
All right.
I'm the project engineer. I'm here today with Mike Dinkle. He's the partner of Tony Rayner of Rayner Shine fame. David, could you get the master site plan up? Sorry for my voice here. Two small items I want to bring up. One is the phasing plan. The master site plan is part of the approval of this rezoning. And in this corner up in here, we're showing phasing, phase 1, phase 2. I know you can't read it, but you would if you had the plan in front of you. We'd like a little more flexibility on the phasing because no one knows how markets change. And we don't want to have to come back in front of the board and change a minor thing, such as we'd rather build that packing steel building as opposed to that secondary loading area. Those, that operation there is conveyor belts with a grinder and a discharge, as you're seeing right there. That, I was shocked, that's about $1 million piece of equipment. Phase 1, we do have one of those. And then they come down in phase 3 or 4. So we're not quite sure how the property will be phased. And like I said, we really don't want to have to come before you every time and say we'd rather build phase 3 now and phase 2 later. I really don't think that's a big issue as far as you're concerned, but it's a big issue for us in terms of making quick business decisions and getting things done. The other small point is the buffer along the south here. I took a walk down on this property down here, and it is an old barrow. It's not really a pit because it only has a pit on one side. It levels off flat on the floodplain of Lake Apopka. But from standing down here and looking up towards the subject property, I didn't have a instrument to measure elevations, but I'm a good 20 or 30 feet below elevation of this up here, to the point where if we put in a fence and even some shrubs, plus there's a slope that transfers this high ground to the low ground, and the slope has to be at least another 50 feet wide. So our 20 feet plus the natural 50 foot that's already occurring, plus the fact that you're not going to be able to even see us, and the purpose of a buffer is to buffer a view. So if this was all flat land, I'd say, well, maybe we should have a big buffer here with big trees and everything else, but we don't have flat land, we have a hilltop, and you can only see what's within the first 10 feet of that ridge. Beyond that, your line of sight goes up into the sky. You won't even know we're up there probably. That's all I have for you tonight.
All right.
Mike, I think, did you have a word you want to say, or?
Answer any questions.
Commission have any questions of the applicant? All right, thank you.
In conclusion, we concur with staff's recommendation for the rezone approval.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, yes, sir, please come up. Give us your name and address. Clear the air.
Very good. Jimmy Dunn, June Engineering Consultants, 14 South Main Street, Winter Garden, Florida, representing Eagles Landing at Ocoee, Inc. We fully intend to develop the site, just not to bore you with details because I know everybody's ready to go home, but we've got other areas of excavation in Hillsborough County that we are developing. And so it's one of our business models to recontour, leave the land usable, and then develop the property at a later date. So our plan is to develop the property. Talking with Mr. Moon, we certainly see the area as an industrial area and would like to probably pursue industrial zoning for the property. And I'd like to get with you on that, Mr. Moon. You know, our biggest thing, and we kind of just dropped this on in staff, and I left a message for the applicant earlier today, but looking back through our title opinions, we discovered a 30-foot right-of-way on the western boundary of the property. I know Jay has only had probably 5 minutes to even look at it. But access to our piece is certainly of concern, and we'd like for that to be looked at and addressed prior to moving forward to City Commission. I don't know, Jay, if you have anything. I know it was a short review to add to that.
Mr. Dunn, let me ask you, so you're not planning to develop at least the northern portion of that as residential? You're looking still at industrial, and if you decide to do residential, you'll buffer yourself down to it? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think the preference is to go with industrial zoning.
The whole thing?
The whole thing.
Okay.
I mean, we need to come through and rezone, but
So his buffer wall is not going to be an issue for you?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
As David mentioned earlier, the applicant provided some documents from the Bowen brothers on easements. Mr. Dunn has dropped off a survey with a couple easements or documents that were recorded in the early 70s that we haven't had an opportunity to look at. Indicate a 30-foot agreement, easement / public right, what it says right of way. So we need to research this a little bit more. I'm not sure.
Along the western boundary of his property?
Well, and that's, I mean, when you get into legal descriptions without a picture attached to it, you got to get into really tracing it. And that's hard to do while a meeting's going on. So I can't specifically address it. It talks about the western portion of the, you know, the eastern half of the southeastern quarter and all this kind of stuff. So it's got to be traced based on the corners and stuff of the.
If I can ask Mr. Dunn, where do you believe this right-of-way runs?
I met, again, this was kind of all discovered at 4 o'clock this afternoon, so frantically running around and looking back at title opinions and the survey that was done back in 2010. Had a chance to meet with the surveyor briefly, and he, you know, reiterated his confidence that there is a 30-foot right-of-way on the western boundary of the property line of the applicant.
Oh, of that.
Eastern boundary or western?
Sorry,
Eastern boundary.
the eastern boundary. My apologies.
And based on your comments, with or without that easement being a public right-of-way or not, you're saying your interest is that a public right-of-way needs to be established from the current terminus of Hermit Smith Road southward to your property?
Well, again, found this out at 4 o'clock today, so want to look into it before it goes on to commission. You know, we can help coordinate with Fishman Surveying and provide any sketches that you may need to help you all look at that. I know it just got dropped in your lap, but, you know, our biggest thing is the property, and I actually personally know the owner of the property back from 1965, Jimmy Roper, and it was a citrus grove at that time, and that property has been accessed through Hermit Smith since then, and then going back to the title opinions, discovered that there was this 30-foot right-of-way today at 4 o'clock.
So you need, when you develop your land, you also need an agreement with, either an agreement with the Bowen brothers to allow you to get to your property down that same right-of-way, assuming it's not a public right-of-way, or you need the city to take property and develop the road to get to your property. That's
We
what
would
you're
like
saying.
to have access. You know, I don't know if it's by way of prescription, prescriptive right, or if it's by way, or, you know, staff would be satisfied with a 30-foot right-of-way. for one user back there, that I don't know. But, and they've been great neighbors to us and vice versa. So we'd certainly like to work with all parties to help everybody out.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else in the audience want to speak? All right. Not sure where to go with this. The first item is to approve the change of zoning from City I-1 and County I-4 to a PUD/I-2 with the recommendations from the staff to be incorporated with that change of zoning. So is there any recommendation or motion that we recommend that to City Council? Change of zoning.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
There is a motion that we recommend change of zoning from County I-4 to County, and City I-1 to City PUD/I-2 with the recommendations from the staff to be incorporated in that PUD change. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. The second item is going to be a little more difficult since we're talking about a preliminary development plan, PUD master plan approval, recommend approval. So somehow we need to address that access to that southern piece of property. I don't know what to do. Any recommendations or suggestions from staff?
So the question I believe you're asking, Chair, is whether the current alleged
All right.
road easement is actually an easement, or whether is a public right-of-way.
Right, I got that. All right, we can make a recommendation to the council that we recommend approval of the master plan. Let me get back to it. Recommend approval of the master site plan, preliminary development plan, subject to access to the gentleman's property to the south of this property in determination whether that's a 30-foot right-of-way or what that is. So that will be the recommendation that I suggest.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
If I'm not following this exactly correctly, but apparently there's 40 feet on the Bowen property, that's an easement. And that to get a 50-foot easement, a 50-foot right-of-way, Rain or Shine's willing to give up 10 feet on their property.
Well, I don't think that 40 feet on the Bowen property is right-of-way. I think they're just granting.
No, but it's an easement, but I understood Rain or Shine say if they, to make a 50-foot easement, a 50-foot right-of-way,
Right.
as the city would like to have, they would give up 10 feet on the frontage of their property.
That is correct.
So the question becomes, if that 10 feet is accommodated by that shop drawing, that's fine. Or that preliminary site plan.
Part of the question now is with this new document that's come forward,
If there's 30 foot,
if
now we
it's
got a
30 foot
problem.
on the front of their property, how does that affect?
Correct. So we'd be hard pressed to approve a PUD or a site plan, preliminary site plan, not knowing where this is all going to happen or could happen. I think that's relevant to the approval. Now, I have no problem making a motion to move it such that it's clarified before the city or this city council deals with it. Is that appropriate?
We will definitely not take this to city council till we have it resolved one way or the other, for sure. I mean, it's not going no matter what till the 1st of August.
Conceptually, I
to
have
get resolved.
conceptually, I have no problem with it. I just don't want to approve it and then find out later we approved something that could be built or precluded something that was in.
If it is determined that 30 feet of public right-of-way occurs on the eastern edge of this property, then the plans would require substantial modification, which would warrant its return back to Planning Commission.
Okay.
Yeah,
Motions.
what's your motion?
I guess my motion would be, subject to clarification on where this 30-foot, alleged 30-foot right-of-way exists, that this be approved, subject to it being clarified that it doesn't exist on this property, that this could go to the city council with a recommendation from this council, or from this commission. Is that fair?
If I understand your comment, and it may require modification to the motion, but it's basically in two parts, that if the right-of-way does not exist, then the Planning Commission is recommending
approval.
If the right-of-way does exist, then the Planning Commission is requesting that the master site plan return for its review, because it would not be consistent, the plan would not be consistent with the land development code. Does that make sense?
Well, I don't have a problem with them, I don't want to make them go through the next step if they find this out. I don't have a problem with them shoving everything to the west 30 feet and going right to the city council if they're in a rush to get this done. And I assume everybody's in a rush.
But even with those two alternatives,
They could move forward.
yeah, but if the 30-foot right-of-way turns out not to be a right-of-way, then there's still no access to that property to the south unless he gets an agreement with, as Rain or Shine did, unless he gets an agreement with Bowman Brothers to get to his property through his 40-foot, right. Oh, is there access to there from Peters?
Not 50 foot, but there is some access.
Okay. I just don't want to cut him off.
Clarifying where it is right now is the issue.
Right.
I mean, so whether he's cut off right now or not, we don't know. It doesn't appear to be Peter's.
I'm assuming I'm going to assume the Bowen brothers are going to give him access just like they did Rain or Shine through there as long as he helps maintain it. I'm assuming that's what's occurring today. Because they're both getting there somehow. All right. So we'll go with your motion and one of those two things. Is there a second to that?
I'm sorry, what about the waivers?
The waivers are part of they remain, right?
They were part of the zoning, I thought.
Yeah,
Correct?
Yeah, they were
They're part of the
change.
zoning standards, correct?
They're part of the zoning. This is the second part,
All right, so we recommend approval to the city council based on one of those two events. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Before you vote, they
Yes.
would like some clarification on their phasing request that they ask about. It's really phase jumping or
Does that matter to y'all?
You have to, it depends on how they permit it, right? I mean, this is a master plan, essentially. They could phase it as,
they can come back, yeah, you still have your final. Yeah. So that's fine.
It's okay? All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries.
Okay, so Ben made the motion, and then who seconded?
Milton.
Thank you.
Site plans, final development, Lady Bird. Thank y'all.
Chairman, Commission, Jay Duvall, Community Development Director. The site before you tonight is Lady Bird Academy of Apopka. Recommend a final development plan. The owner is Marshall Howard. Fragmented Engineering is the engineer. The land use is commercial, Zone C1. It's for a daycare facility just under 4.5 acres. Site is shown up on the screen. It's along Rock Springs Road, just north of Orange County Services Building. It's for a 13,388 square foot daycare facility. The stormwater is master planned to the east part of the property, and I'll get into the waiver request on that. They do want to have a a wet retention pond, excuse me. Parking, they have met the code for parking. However, there will be a need for a temporary driveway easement. There is one driveway to the site, which is more on the northern end, northwest corner, as shown in the
plan here. The elevations, which are in your package, meet our design guidelines. There are 4 waiver requests. First one is for a 6-foot-high masonry wall for commercial sites adjacent to residential. As shown on the vicinity map, the property to the north is zone R1 AAA, but we do not believe that that's going to develop as residential, so staff does not object to this waiver. Second waiver is for the dumpster enclosure, which is required to be brick or stone. They would like to use stucco to match the building. Staff does not object to that waiver. The third one, which requires ponds to be dry, due to the conditions out there, they want to have a wet retention pond that is fenced, and staff does not object to that. And the fourth one requires 30% of the front facade to be composed of windows and doors, and as seen in the color rendering here, and this type of facility, staff does not feel it's practical for that type of use and does not object to that waiver request either. Development Review Committee recommends approval of the Lady Bird Academy and final development plan.
All right, does the commission have any questions of staff?
A question on the second waiver. The application says staff does not support this waiver request. I think you said you did not object to it.
Long word.
This is, applicant is requesting a waiver from the dumpster enclosure design standards.
Oh. You know about that one? I see that now. Staff does not support this waiver request.
Is that just a typo? Or is that true?
David, do you have an answer?
Under each of the requests,
On the
it states that staff does not object to the
No.
request, so it's a typo.
The second one says staff does not support this waiver request.
I'm assuming you do support it and it's just on the typo.
It's a typo.
Okay.
All right, so we'll consider it that the staff does not
do not
object
object
to that request, waiver request.
One word.
All right.
Object. Sorry.
Anybody else have any questions of staff? All right, does anybody in the audience want to speak? All right, we'll bring it back to the commission. What is your recommendation for the final development plan of Lady Bird Academy? Is there a motion? We recommend approval of the Lady Bird Academy final development plan with the waiver request, subject to finding of the staff report. There's a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. Final development plan, Verizon Wireless.
Thank you, Chairman, Commission. Jay Duvall, Community Development Director. This is for the Verizon Wireless, Apopka. Recommended final approval of final development plan. The owner is Camille Investment Group. Applicant is Rock RDP LLC. Rogers Engineering, in care of Bill Mendiria, which is a typo on yours, so apologize for that. It is located along at the intersection of Lake Doe Boulevard and US 441. Zone, its land use is commercial, zone C2, for a Verizon wireless retail store, which will be 2,380 square feet. Stormwater has been designed for an on-site retention pond and meets our requirements. Parking has 17 spaces. The exterior design meets our design criteria. There you go. Meets our design criteria. There is one waiver request on the site plan. Typically, for a fenced-in retention pond, you have a 10-foot maintenance berm, but they would like a 5-foot maintenance berm, and due to the size and the location and the ability to maintain it, staff does not object to this waiver request to go down to 5-foot. Development Review Committee does recommend approval of the Verizon Wireless building.
All right, does the commission have any questions of staff? Anybody in the audience want to speak? Public hearing? Close the public hearing, and what is the pleasure of the commission? Is there a motion that we recommend approval of the Verizon Wireless Final Development Plan with a waiver request subject to findings of the staff report?
So move.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. Any old business? Any new business? Then we'd be adjourned. Good grief.